Okay, so we're going to be talking, and this program is about, your nutrition through thinking about your macronutrients, blood sugar, and how to your strategy in midlife really in order to lose body fat. So for those who don't know me, just a little bit about me. I'm 54 so I'm the other side of menopause. I've over 2 decades of experience in women's health, strength, and performance. And I'm a real believer in body confidence coming not just from how you look, but how you feel and move. Before I was a coach, I was an associate editor for national magazines. So I've written pretty much about everything from cortisol and the inflammatory impact of stress on the body, science of nutrition. And if any of you saw my viral post about Demi Moore, that had 32.5 million views. I also used to talk a lot about celebrity diet and fitness regimes or the Hollywood A-list. So since 2009, though, I've coached women exclusively. So helping to transform mindset, body composition, and beliefs about what's possible in midlife. So I'm really passionate about it not just being about aesthetics, but taking women beyond that so you feel great in your body for life. So eating nutrition in midlife. So understanding what you eat matters more in your 40s and 50s than it ever did before. And that's why some of you have come onto this program. Um, Hormonal shifts definitely do impact during perimenopause and menopause how your body handles things like blood sugar, fat storage, your muscle maintenance, and energy regulation. But that aside, there are still some basic foundations and principles around calories in. And if you understand your macronutrients and blood sugar control and the physiological impact of certain foods, then it's really easy to work with it. So it's not a case of like, I'm perimenopause or menopause or age, and that means dot, 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 I am going to put on weight. And that's a foregone conclusion because it's just not. And it's not that you're stuck if you have put on weight with that. So I'm just going to go through macronutrients because some of you might know what they are, some of you don't. I know I often ask this on calls and people still get a little bit confused. So in essence, your macronutrients are those things that make up your food, and they should be all three of these. Ideally, should be on your plate for each 3 meals. So your protein is really important. It repairs and builds muscle, supports metabolism, it helps control your appetite just because it takes longer to digest. So, therefore, it helps to fill you up. Be very careful though, because there's so much around on Instagram at the moment that I think women can get a little bit confused and think just by having protein it builds your muscle. It doesn't. It can maintain it, but without the exercise stimulus, it doesn't build muscle in and of itself. Your carbohydrates, the big if you were born in the 60s or 70s and grew up and then came of age in the 90s, carbohydrates became the equivalent of cortisol nowadays, like the evil carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are really necessary. They're your primary energy source, fuel your brain and muscles, and really important for performance and recovery. Like I cannot tell you the number of women who I've coached who have thought they had brain fog from hormone change, and it simply wasn't. They weren't eating enough carbohydrate, and it was mainly that. And then fats. So your fats, we're talking about healthy fats, your omega 3s and your six things like olive oil, mackerel, oily fish, nuts, seeds, those kind of fats, essential for hormone production, brain health, and also absorption of vitamins. So if you're I don't think many people are now, but if there's some people can be still stuck in that idea of low fat, you actually need fats. So these become really important for body composition and energy. Um, so as I said, why protein matters more in midlife. As our estrogen and progesterone decline, we are losing muscle mass even more. You start losing muscle mass from the age of 30 onwards, bit by bit. As we go through hormone change, that accelerates. And muscle is metabolically active. So if you're sitting around and you've got more muscle, your body is actively burning more calories at rest. So, you know, as I'm talking about, Demi Moore on, I wasn't talking about her body shape, but let's talk about her body shape. You know, if you're going to lose loads of weight, a lot of that's going to be muscle mass. And this is why, if you've potentially yo-yo dieted when you were younger, and lost weight but not really thought about your muscle mass, a lot of that could have been muscle, and therefore metabolically you slow down. So it's not actually your metabolism doesn't slow down because of your age. It doesn't necessarily really slow down because of your of hormone change. It's slowing down because you're losing muscle, and that's what drives your metabolism. So if your protein intake is too low, then your muscle loss accelerates, your metabolic rate drops, and therefore fat gain. Particularly, fat gain is just become a lot more easy uh, to happen. So protein isn't about dieting. It's not a diet food. It's about maintaining your strength, which therefore helps you maintain your metabolism, keeps you feeling fuller for longer, and keeps your energy up. So just some kind of to the left there, just some ideas of protein amounts in certain things. If you're vegan or vegetarian, it is a little bit harder because the protein sources have got less in them. But definitely, you can see here, this is a bit misleading because if you look at that and it says 29 grams of protein for almonds, you might think, oh, I'll just eat lots of almonds. Unfortunately, to get 29 grams of protein is very calorific from almonds. So you have to be really thinking about the whole picture, not just the protein amount. And then we're talking about, does anybody know? Give me a one in the chat if you know what a glycemic index is, or two if you don't. Everyone can answer, so I have a bit more understanding of whether anybody does. So one if you do, two if you don't. Okay, so I'm going to go through it. So there's a and the reason we talk about it is because um, you'll have heard all over Instagram. I'm actually doing a post about this for tomorrow. It's not about calories in, calories out in midlife. It kind of still is. The foundations of that are still true, but the nuances are that your carbohydrates, you absolutely need carbohydrates, but you need to think about the quality of your carbohydrates and how quickly it releases energy into your bloodstream. So scientists came up with this index which rates how quickly sugar is released into your body. So you can look that up online. There'll be a glycemic index for almost every food. So what you want to do in midlife is really think about lower GI foods that release energy much more slowly. So your whole foods, your fruit and vegetable, your oats, and those high GI foods like your obvious stuff like your sugar and your sweets, but then also things like white bread, white processed bread in particular. So if you go into the supermarket and you squeeze a loaf of bread, if that bread doesn't spring back or it's just literally like, you can like roll up a slice of bread in your hand and it just turns into a molten lump and doesn't do anything, that means it's hardly got anything in it. It releases sugar really, really quickly. So you want to be thinking about switching to whole grain rice, quinoa, all of those things, because what is happening is your body in midlife is not as good at dealing with blood sugars and insulin response. So when those sugars get released into the system, into your blood, your body's more sensitive to blood sugar spikes, so it leads to larger insulin responses, and that signals the body to store energy. And we've got more cortisol insulin receptors in our tummy, so that's why you can suddenly start putting on loads more around your belly in particular. So it's not just about your calories in, calories out, and it's not just about any carbohydrates, it's about the quality of the carbohydrates. The only exception to that is if you're doing a performance event, then you absolutely do need fast release carbohydrates. But that's a slightly different nutritional approach that I take with those kinds of clients because it requires a little bit more nuance. So yes, you can get increased abdominal fat, energy crashes, and sugar cravings. So obviously, I'm sure some of you must have heard that when you have that high sugar response and then it crashes, your immediate about 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour afterwards, you're suddenly like, I feel knackered again. And what do? When you feel knackered, you think, oh, I need a quick energy spurt. I'm going to have something sugary or something that to keep me going. And then you're constantly on that cycle. Um, and now getting a little bit more into the nitty-gritty of what you're going to be doing in this program, whether you're some of my one-to-ones clients on this one as well as in the program. So you've got to be thinking, I hear this all the time from women in DMs, I've got no willpower, I don't know why, I don't seem to be motivated. You've got to get rid of all of that thought about and just replace it with strategy and structure. So when it comes to nutrition specifically, we're talking about here, try not to wing it. When you make decisions on the fly, usually if you're really busy, this is what happens. You don't, we think about our work schedule, we think about our kids, we think about this, that, and the other. But that most fundamental thing about what we eat to fuel our bodies, to help us have energy to do the jobs we've got to do, have the body that we want, we just don't think about it. Somehow we're just going to wing it. So you've got to be thinking of don't rely on willpower or motivation to resist snacks. Use strategy and your structure, and the momentum creates energy. So there are two different ways you can use um, the nutrition in this program. So you can do it by thinking about your macros on your plate. So I've had women who have used my recipes and have just thought about intuitively looking at their plate and thinking, before they eat it, have I got 3 macros on the plate? And for most women, it's such a massive change from what they're normally eating, that you lose weight simply from doing that and start feeling energized by that. So I'm talking about literally at your breakfast thinking, have I got a source of protein on there? Like Farge fat-free yogurt. And that's the only time I ever recommend fat-free because of the way that Greek yogurt is strained. It has more protein in than the fat version. So Farge fat-free yogurt, like oats, overnight oats with some apple. It's got your fibre, it's got some protein. Chia seeds add a little bit more protein. Thinking about things like that, or your eggs with some greens. So new way of tracking your macros, sorry, going back to macros, and making sure that you do that across all 3 meals and don't skip a meal. So that's the other thing about trying to think about not skipping a meal. So traditionally, women will say, I don't feel hungry at breakfast, so I skip it, because in your head, you're like, well, I've saved calories, so it's great. But what that means is that you end up snacking at 11ish, then that might push on your lunch because you think, oh, I'm not hungry for your lunch, and everything gets pushed out of whack. So for this 5 days, if you're on the 5-day program, think about doing all 3 meals. The other option is that in the app you can track. So I know some of you have come onto this by contacting me about a nutrition audit and looking at your macros and your calories, how many you should have. So calories has this kind of, calorie tracking has this bad reputation if you've done it in the past, where you just think, oh God, I can't bear doing it. It's like awful. That's normally because most women have like come up with some arbitrary figure for what they should be tracking. It's impossible. Often in magazines it was 1200. 1200 calories is irrelevant. It's about your body shape and it's about your body weight, and that dictates how many calories you should have, not like an arbitrary number. So you can also track. So you can either choose one of the two things. You can either think about making sure you're thinking about all 3 macros, or you can ask me to turn on your tracking and you can track it using the in-app tracker. And the way to do it is to pre-populate your day. So don't do your tracking as you go on during the day, because that becomes exhausting. And then suddenly you're like at work and you've just had your lunch and you think, I haven't got time to track my lunch. So what you do is you structure at the beginning of your day, you sit down, you give yourself 10 minutes and you say, beginning of the day, this is what I'm going to have for my breakfast, lunch and dinner. Now, if I've turned on your tracking for you, you'll know exactly how many calories you need and how many grams of each macro you need. So rather than getting to the end of the day and thinking, oh, I didn't make it, in the morning you've already decided, you figure it out and you go, well, that still's not going to give me enough, or that's going to give me too little. You change it at the beginning of the day. So therefore, the rest of the day, when you're like, oh, I don't, what do I have now? You just look and go, that's what I'm having, because that's what I know will hit my intake. And then low protein across the day. Do not think about, oh, I'm going to get all my protein in at the end of the day because you won't be able to do it. You'll feel sick. You'll be like, I cannot eat any more protein. And really, you protein keeps you feeling fuller for longer. So if you track it through the day, have like equal amounts breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you'll feel satisfied all day. And therefore, you won't feel the need to snack and you won't have a sugar craving because you'll be satisfied. The reason I put the protein shake, I recommend everyone have a protein shake between 2 and 4, is most men and women between 2 and 4 get that feeling at work of like, oh, I feel really knackered. And you feel tired. It doesn't come across as hunger. You just feel tired or a bit bored at work, or you start, procrastinating. That's normally lack of fuel. And so 2 to 4 can often be a good time to use one of your protein shake. That's 30 grams of protein is the one that I recommend. Because typically breakfast can be a little bit harder to get stuff in unless you're having loads of eggs with egg whites, because um, eggs have only got 6 grams of protein in per egg. So if you're only having one, it's not enough. Even three is 18, so it's still going to be a bit lower. And then for when you're trying to lose body fat or the bloat, you're thinking about just keep it simple. You don't have to keep your meals simple forever, but rather than having like complex recipes that you've got input to a tracker, just for a week, keep it really simple on rotation. Like if you've got family and they like meat, just have like meat and leafy green vegetables with a bit of whole grain rice. If you like fish, have fish. Definitely, have we got any vegans or veggies on here? Yeah, yeah. So you definitely have to be thinking about like your temper is probably the highest protein source above soy. Edamame beans in stews also add a lot. So I'd be thinking about things like that. So when your meals are predictable, tracking is so much easier than if you do massive complicated meals. Um, so and what I really want you to get your head around, because there'll be a lot of people who've come on here and you've probably done intermittent fasting, you've probably done Slimming World, Weight Watchers, and everything you'll have done will have been about restriction. Like, I need to restrict, restrict, restrict. And it's really not about restriction, it's actually about um, switching from thinking about restriction to thinking about an abundance mindset. Rather than thinking, what can I not have? Think about, well, what can I have that's going to be a much more filling and nourishing food source, and actually give me energy, rather than what can I not have. So prioritize protein. Well, it's kind of the wrong thing actually. It's not about prioritizing. It is prioritizing protein for lots of you who might not have realized how little protein you're actually having. 100% of women who come into my coaching, when they say they're having protein, and when I tell them how much they actually should have for their body size, they're nowhere near. So it's not a protein emphasis, it's not a protein high diet, it's actually what you should be having. And create simple systems around food and structure it into your day. I literally say to some of my clients, if you're the kind of person who thinks, I'm just going to finish this task off at work before I eat, I'll just finish this, I'll just do that, and then you suddenly 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, you still haven't eaten, and then you think, oh, I'll have a snack and then I'll ride through till dinner. You'll never manage to lose weight if you keep doing that. Literally, put it in your diary when you're going to eat, structure it, and eat at that time you've put in your diary. And don't let work push it out of the way. So that is a simple thing that actually really works.